Most people hike to unwind, unplug, and maybe catch a sunset. It's usually me. 2 years of mountain trails and national parks behind me, always tracing someone else's footprints. But this time, in the Arizona spring, I wanted a taste of the unknown. I parked by an abandoned ranger station, its windows long busted, doors chained shut, and spotted a path nearly swallowed by stone and sage. It wasn't on any map. That was exactly the point. The desert had that spellbinding emptiness, where every sound seems sharper and the air feels old. At first, all I heard was my own breathing, the scrape of lizard claws and birds overhead. But on mile 2, the silence twisted like the landscape was listening. The wind cut out. Every shadow looked like it was waiting. That's when I heard it, a whistle. Just 3 notes floating on the air, so soft I almost doubted myself. Up the ridge, nothing moved. Why would anyone be out here, whistling into the void? Ignoring my nerves, I pressed deeper. The trail narrowed into a tight canyon. Tall rock walls hemmed me in, the sunlight vanished, and with every step, the atmosphere pressed closer. Another whistle louder now, echoing off the stone. Adrenaline shot through me like ice water. I spun around. Empty canyon. No footprints but my own. I called out a hollow hello, swallowed by silence. Then came the stench. Sweet rot, thick and wrong. Something dead, probably. Or so I hoped. I rounded a bend, and there it was. A primitive shrine hidden in the rock, woven from sticks and bones. Scraps of old flannel tangled in the wind. No one sane had made this. My instincts screamed, leave now. But then buried in the dark, that same whistle echoed again. Not a recording, not the wind, something alive. I backed away, heart trying to punch out of my chest. That's when gravel crunched behind me. I froze, turned. A goat stood 10 feet away, too white, too clean for the desert. It stared with unblinking, human-like focus. Its chest barely moved. Trying to calm myself, I whispered, easy, by edging away. Its mouth opened, then whistled. Those same 3 mocking notes? Chill shot up my spine. My mind wouldn't accept it. Goats can't whistle. But it just stared and whistled again and again. I bolted, blind with fear, tripping over rocks until I found my car. I don't remember locking the door, just the sound of my pulse and the memory of that stare. Sleep became impossible. Every night, the image haunted neath a goat's eyes, and that whistle looping endlessly in my drained skull. Out of desperation, I searched online. Folktales, paranormal forums. I stumbled onto stories from the Navajo and Hopi about skinwalkers, shapeshifters that mimic voices, noises, anything to draw you in. One account jumped out. If you hear whistling in the desert and see no one run, never answer. Another warned. Skinwalkers use familiar sounds, tricks that crawled under your skin and never left. Laptop closed. I sat frozen. My tiny apartment suddenly felt like a casket. It's then clear as day. Outside my window, 3 notes, drifting up from the street. The whistle. I tore open the curtains. Nothing, just shifting shadows and the wind. That was months ago. I switched apartments, even changed cities. But on some nights, when sleep's just out of reach, I hear it soft, patient, waiting. So if you ever find yourself alone in the desert and someone whistles from just out of sight, don't answer. Don't look, because sometimes it isn't a person. And if whatever's out there starts whistling back, you're already in too deep.
When I was 9 years old, my dad took me on a camping trip that still sends a cold shiver down my spine. One I struggle to talk about even now. It was supposed to be our annual family tradition, a long weekend getaway at Eagle Ridge Campgrounds, nestled deep in northern Wisconsin's forests. My dad loved the outdoors. He said nature cleans your head out. But for me, it was the campfires, roasting marshmallows, and the spooky ghost stories we told under a blanket of stars. Our family camped with another family. Dad's best friend, Billy, his wife, and their 2 kids, Tyler and Kate. We'd been camping together for years, but the grown-ups had one joke that never got old. Every year, they'd send us kids on a snipe hunt. If you haven't heard of a snipe hunt, it's a classic outdoor prank. They tell you there's this rare creature lurking in the woods, and you're supposed to catch it using silly methods like holding a bag open and calling its name. The adults sit back, laughing quietly as you wander the dark forest chasing nothing. I was the youngest, and I believed every word. The first 2 nights were everything you'd hope for on a camping trip. We fished by the lake, hiked through sun-dappled woods, and laughed around the fire while crickets sang their nighttime symphony. But on the 3rd night, everything changed. After dinner, Billy lowered his voice and nodded toward the woods. "I saw a snipe earlier, down by the creek," he said. Tyler rolled his eyes. "You say that every year." Billy just grinned, eyes twinkling. "Not this year. It was close, real close." The adults exchanged secret glances, trying hard not to laugh, but the kids were hooked. My sister grabbed a flashlight and said, "Let's do it." By 9:30 p.m., we were deep in the woods, flashlights bobbing in the dark, following Billy's lead. The trees closed in tight on both sides, humidity thick and heavy. The grown-ups stayed behind, out of earshot, while we kids marched on, voices bouncing off the silent trunks, calling snipe, snipe. At first, it felt like an exciting adventure. We were explorers on a secret mission. But after a while, the laughter faded. The woods grew eerily still. No crickets, no birds, no wind whispering through the leaves. Only our footsteps crunching on dry leaves, somehow louder in that unsettling quiet. Billy suddenly stopped and told us, "I'm going to go ahead and try to flush it out. Stay right here." Without waiting for a reply, he disappeared into the darkness. Seconds ticked by. Then, without warning, we heard it. A scream, loud, piercing, full of pain and terror. Then silence. We were frozen. Kate started crying, and Tyler shouted, "Dad? Dad?" No answer. My stomach twisted into knots. The adults were still far behind, too far to hear. Then we heard something moving, fast branches snapping, leaves crunching close. "Run!" Tyler shouted. And so we ran. I didn't know where, just away. Branches slapped at my face, flashlight beam bouncing and struggling to keep up. My legs burned, my lungs screamed for air. Finally, I stumbled and fell behind a thick bush, crawling inside and swallowing every panicked breath. Then I heard it, a low moaning sound, not quite a groan, more like someone struggling to breathe or speak through broken lungs. It was close. I shut off my flashlight and pressed myself low, peering through the leaves. At first, I saw nothing. Then movement, a shape awkwardly walking between the trees. It wasn't Billy. It walked on 2 legs, but its movements were wrong. Jerky, uncoordinated like a puppet whose strings were tangled. Its skin looked tight and pale, stretched too thin. Its limbs were thin, crooked, twisted like broken branches. Its head hung forward, tilted at a strange angle. It stopped, sniffed the air, and let out a sound that was neither moan nor growl, but something in between. My heart hammered like a drum in my chest, and then I heard it. My name. Eli. It was my dad's voice, but this voice wasn't coming from the camp. It came from behind the creature. "Eli, where are you, buddy?" The voice was calm, almost sing-song, but there was something flat, soulless about it. Dad's voice was never like that. The strange figure straightened up slowly. Then it turned its head toward me. I swear I saw its mouth move, like it was trying to smile. "Eli," the voice came from its cracked lips. I clapped my hands over my mouth, trying not to scream. The creature started toward me, slow, deliberate, almost deliberate in its stalking. Then the smell hit me, sweet rot, like dead meat baking in the sun. My eyes watered and stung. Just then, I heard something else, a voice cutting through the night. "Eli!" It was my real dad, shouting, desperate, from far away. The creature froze. Its head twitched toward the real voice. For a moment, it stood still, as motionless as a statue. Then, it turned and melted away between the trees, silent as shadows. I stayed hidden until my dad found me, and the moment he pulled me out of that bush, I broke down, crying like I'd never cried before. He thought it was just the prank gone wrong, scared kids' nerves. I couldn't explain what I'd seen. We got back to camp, and there was Billy, alive and laughing. His scream had been part of the prank. He'd faked it to scare us. The adults cracked jokes, but when I told them about the thing in the woods, their smiles vanished. Billy's wife whispered, "Maybe it was just a deer." My dad didn't say a word. That night, he double-checked all the locks on the camper and sat wide awake staring at the dark tree line until dawn. When we got home, he never mentioned the trip again. Years later, when I was 16, I finally asked him about that night. I was ready for him to laugh or call it imagination. But instead, he looked me dead in the eyes and said, "You remember that tall thing that moved wrong?" I nodded. He exhaled slowly and said, "You weren't the only one who saw it." He told me he'd gone searching for me when he heard the scream and caught a glimpse of something tall, thin, walking on two legs, but not human. When his flashlight beam caught it, it slipped behind a tree. He never camped again. For years I tried to push it down, call it a trick of the night, a scared kid's hallucination. But a year ago, out of sheer curiosity, I looked up stories of creatures like what I'd seen. What I found was terrifying. Legends from Native American tribes of the Southwest, the Navajo, the Hopi, Skinwalkers, entities said to mimic voices, even those of people you love, to lure you out into the dark. They could take the shape of animals or even humans if they'd taken enough from them. One line stuck deep in my mind. If it calls your name from the dark, it already knows you're there. I never set foot back at Eagle Ridge. The campground is still open, but the thought of that voice, even once, is enough to keep me miles away. Sometimes, though, when the world goes quiet and the night air turns still, I swear I hear it again. Soft, broken. Eli?
For nearly 10 years, my wife and I lived what most people would call a dream life. We owned a small wooden cabin deep in the forests of northern Canada. No neighbors in sight, no traffic, no cell reception, just endless trees and quiet. I used to tell my friends, if peace had a sound, it'd be the wind through these pines. Our days followed a comforting rhythm. I tended to the vegetable garden and the small herd of cattle we raised for milk and trade. My wife homeschooled the kids, and on weekends we'd visit the few families scattered miles apart. Walking along narrow footpaths that twisted through the forest like veins, we traded bread, shared dinners, swapped stories. For almost a decade, life was simple, predictable, perfect, until it wasn't. It started on a calm September night. The sky was clear, the air sharp with autumn. I was reading in the living room when I heard the cattle outside growing restless. At first, it sounded like shuffling a few hooves against the fence. Then came frantic lowing, a sound of panic animals only make when something feels wrong. I stepped to the window, brushing the curtain aside. In the moonlight, I saw the herd pressed against the far corner of the field, tails swishing, heads turning toward the trees. My first thought was wolves. We'd lost one calf that way years ago. But then I saw it. On the opposite edge of the field, half hidden behind a spruce, stood a deer. At least, I thought it was a deer. Its body looked normal, maybe a little tall, but its head, the way it faced the house, that was what froze me. It didn't move. Not a twitch, not a breath. just stared. For nearly a full minute, I stood there with my hand on the curtain, trying to make sense of it. The cattle refused to calm, still crowding the fence. Finally, I let the curtain fall. It's just a deer, I told myself. They're skittish, that's all. But that wasn't the last time I'd see it. A few weeks passed. One night, my wife woke me just after 3 a.m. Her hand was shaking my shoulder. "Listen," she whispered. At first, I heard nothing. Then it came. A slow, deliberate scraping sound, circling the cabin's exterior. It wasn't claws on wood. It sounded like someone dragging a stick along the walls, inch by inch. We both held our breath. The sound made a full lap around the house, then stopped. I leaped out of bed, grabbed my hunting rifle, and checked on the kids, both asleep, safe. Then I moved from room to room, peering out each window. Everyone showed the same thing, darkness, until I reached our bedroom window. There it was, the deer, standing in the tree line, motionless again, its silhouette almost human tall. The longer I looked, the more wrong it appeared. Its neck too straight, its legs too long, its head tilted as if listening. The moon caught its eyes, and they glimmered, faintly white. I lowered the curtain and didn't sleep the rest of the night. The next morning, I decided I needed answers. I told my wife to keep the kids inside and the doors locked while I walked to our neighbor Mark's cabin, a 2-mile trek through the woods. The air was cold, brittle. Every crack of a branch underfoot made me flinch. Halfway there, I began to feel watched. I told myself it was paranoia until I heard the soft rustle of leaves behind me. I turned and froze. 15 feet away stood the deer, its eyes locked onto mine. But what sent a jolt of terror through me wasn't its stare. It was its eyes themselves. The pupils were small and round, ringed by white like human eyes, not dark animal ones. I couldn't move. My body wouldn't obey. Then, without thinking, I bolted, running blind through the trees until I burst into Mark's clearing. He opened the door to find me, shaking and pale. I told him what I'd seen. I expected him to laugh, to say it was just wildlife. Instead, his expression hardened. He motioned me inside, shut the door, and poured me a cup of coffee. "You ever hear of a Skinwalker?" he asked. I blinked. "Like from Navajo stories." He nodded slowly. "They're not just stories. People say they can take the form of animals, deer, coyotes, even people sometimes, but the eyes give them away." He leaned closer. "If you see human eyes where they shouldn't be, you run." His calmness terrified me more than the story itself. I left not long after, heart pounding all the way home. I didn't tell my wife what Mark had said. I didn't want to scare her, but I started keeping the rifle loaded by the door. For weeks, nothing happened. Slowly, the tension faded. I convinced myself it had just been a trick of the light, maybe an injured deer behaving strangely. Then, one night in late October, our youngest, Emma, screamed. I bolted from bed, rifle in hand. She was pointing toward her window, crying, "There's a man outside." I rushed over, pulled the curtain, and for the briefest moment caught a glimpse, something tall and pale, ducking away from the glass. We didn't sleep that night. At dawn, I searched the ground below her window. The soil was soft from rain, and there were tracks, but they weren't human or animal. They were a mix, elongated, deep-set, like a barefoot person with hooves for toes. That's when I knew we had to leave. I told my wife to pack essentials. Within a week, we'd moved closer to town, renting a small house on the outskirts. We told the kids it was for better schooling, but the truth was, I couldn't bear another night in that forest. 15 years have passed since then. The kids are grown, the cabin long sold. But some nights, when sleep won't come, I think about those eyes in the dark. I still go hunting sometimes. Old habits die hard. A few months ago, I was driving back from a trip at dusk when a deer crossed the road ahead. For a second, I thought nothing of it until it stopped in the middle of the road and turned toward my truck. Its eyes caught the headlights. White irises, small pupils, human. It didn't move until I honked and swerved past it. My heart didn't slow for miles. I'll never know what that thing was, some twisted freak of nature or something far older, darker. But one thing I do know, the forest keeps its secrets, and somewhere in those woods, something still wears the shape of a deer and watches. If stories like this make your pulse quicken, subscribe for more real-life mysteries and chilling encounters. You never know what waits beyond the tree line.
Don't forget to subscribe because there are more stories like this, waiting to be told.